They weren't supposed to be there. Not dressed like that. Not standing where the elite of Paris gathered under chandeliers and velvet ropes. A hush fell the moment Keanu Reeves stepped out of the car. No red carpet, no entourage, just a black turtleneck under a long coat. His face was unreadable, calm like a man who had nothing to prove. Behind him, Rowan Atkinson stumbled out, nearly tripping over the curb, his bow tie hanging awkwardly, and tux looking like it had been pulled from someone else's closet. A photographer chuckled under his breath. Security brought their cousin? Inside the Musée d'Arte, the whispers started before they even walked through the Grand Arch. One woman in emerald silk leaned toward her husband and muttered, "They must have taken a wrong turn. This is an invitation-only auction." He laughed. "Or maybe they're catering." Champagne flutes paused mid-air. Conversations turned to smirks. People stared. Keanu didn't blink. Rowan gave a tiny wave to a waiter who wasn't even looking. They handed over a cream-colored invitation card, embossed, official, and the clerk's eyes widened when the scanner chimed. Special clearance confirmed. "Welcome, Mr. Reeves, Mr. Atkinson." The guard at the entrance hesitated, clearly unsure what just happened. Across the marble room, Lucette Duval's smile vanished. Known for controlling everything from the menu to the million-dollar artifacts displayed tonight, she was already halfway into her Dom Perignon when she noticed the two men walking in like shadows who didn't belong. "They're letting the entertainment in early," she whispered to her companion, a billionaire shipping tycoon who just laughed. "That one looks like he fixes pipes. The other might be here for the snacks." Keanu heard it. He didn't turn. He simply placed his hand on Rowan's back and gently guided him further inside. The hall was vast, the air tight with perfume and pretension. Rowan was already nervously scanning the cutlery, trying to decide if the small fork was for cheese or fish. Keanu stood still, his eyes locked on the statue at the center of the room, a Roman emperor's bust, cold and silent. "They think we're a joke," Rowan muttered under his breath. Keanu didn't answer. He just smiled faintly. "Good. That'll make the ending more interesting." And then the music stopped. Not literally, but the energy shifted. A tall man in a Versace suit glanced at them with clear disdain and muttered loud enough, "Events like this used to have standards. Now we're watching sitcoms and security guards waltz in." Keanu turned to him, slowly, with no expression. The man paused. His mouth opened, but nothing came out. He turned away. Rowan leaned in. "I think he just swallowed his tie." Keanu gave the smallest nod. "Let him chew." Behind them, Lucette was still sipping, but her fingers had tightened around the glass. She didn't know that the stage she stood on, the hall she ruled over, the statue she planned to outbid everyone for, was already theirs. Stay to the end, because some truths don't shine under spotlights. They echo in silence. Before we go further, tell us where in the world you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. The chandelier dimmed slightly, signaling the start of the private bidding. But something felt different in the air, like a storm waiting just beyond the velvet drapes. The murmurs in the room faded as the host stepped onto the podium. "Before tonight's final piece is revealed," he said, "the museum requests your attention for a short presentation. This is special." The lights lowered further, and all eyes turned to the central screen. Rowan adjusted his bow tie, whispering, "Please let this be a trailer for a rom-com I'm not in." Keanu's gaze stayed fixed forward, unmoved. The screen flickered to life. First, the sound of wind. Then, sand. Footage appeared, grainy, shaky, clearly from a war-torn zone. A man carrying something wrapped in cloth sprinted through rubble while explosions echoed in the background. Rowan's eyes widened. "Wait! Is that—" The room leaned forward in silence as the man in the footage passed the bundle to another figure beside a black SUV. The camera caught the face for only a moment, partially covered in ash and smoke. But it was enough. Gasps. "That's Keanu Reeves," someone whispered. And then the second man appeared, dust-covered, bruised, standing in a shattered church, holding what looked like a broken statue. He looked confused. He smiled at the camera and gave a thumbs up. "That's Mr. Bean." "No," someone else murmured. "That's Rowan Atkinson." The room fell silent again. The footage ended on a single title card. Recovered. Restored. Returned. Thanks to two silent patrons. Lucette's champagne glass tilted in her hand, but she didn't sip. Her face, once confident and glowing, had frozen in disbelief. She glanced at Elliot, the billionaire next to her. "Is this a joke?" Elliot wasn't laughing. "That was real," he said, eyes locked on the screen. The host stepped forward again. "This final artifact was nearly lost during the 2013 cathedral bombing. No government helped. No foundation stepped in. It was recovered and protected by two men who asked for no recognition. Until tonight." A velvet curtain at the back of the room began to rise slowly. Behind it stood the actual statue, encased in glass, lit with reverent golden light. A marble boy emperor, one foot pressing down on a serpent, his face calm, commanding, eternal. A collective breath escaped the crowd. The auctioneer's voice dropped to a near whisper. "Only two names have been granted the right to bid on this item." He looked down at the card in his hand. "Mr. Rowan Atkinson and Mr. Keanu Reeves." Another pause. Another wave of shock. Lucette sat frozen, her fingers twitching against the glass. All the mocking smiles in the room faded. The jokes turned into silence. The ones who were laughed at were now the only ones allowed to play. Rowan blinked. "I thought this was just a museum party with tiny food." Keanu looked at him and said quietly, "It's ours to lose." The camera turned, the entire room watching two men they didn't understand, rising from the shadows, stepping into the light. As they approached the front of the hall, the tension was thick enough to touch. Every pair of eyes tracked them. Those same guests who had dismissed them as intruders now sat with flushed cheeks and clenched jaws. Lucette didn't breathe. This was her night, her auction. And yet, the crowd wasn't looking at her anymore. They were watching the quiet man in black and the clumsy one in wrinkled clothes. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Due to the conditions placed upon this artifact's donation, bidding is restricted. However," he paused, scanning the room, "if both Mr. Reeves and Mr. Atkinson agree, an exception may be made." Gasps turned to murmurs. Lucette sat up straighter. "Of course," she said, her voice slicing through the quiet like glass. "Surely we're not going to restrict open bidding in a public auction." Keanu turned to Rowan. Rowan squinted dramatically at the auctioneer. "Oh, now they want us involved?" The room chuckled nervously. Keanu gave a small nod. "Let her in," he said, his voice calm, unbothered. Lucette raised her paddle, not wasting a second. "5 million." Rowan blinked. She didn't even warm up. Keanu didn't hesitate. 7. Lucette narrowed her eyes. 10. The air tightened. People leaned forward like they were watching a silent boxing match. No shouting, no rage, just precision, controlled power. Rowan glanced at Keanu, half whispering, "Should we be worried?" Keanu's gaze swept the room, then landed on Lucette. "No." He looked at the auctioneer. 12 million. Silence. Lucette's hand hovered, her lips parted, but no sound came. She slowly lowered the paddle. She'd been beaten. But worse than that, she'd been outclassed. The gavel came down. Sold to Mr. Reeves and Mr. Atkinson. Applause erupted, genuine this time, not out of politeness, but out of awe. Keanu stood still. Rowan gave an awkward wave, as if apologizing again for existing. And then, the auctioneer stepped aside as the protective glass casing slowly rose, revealing the Marble Boy Emperor in full glory. Even Lucette had to admit it. The statue was magnificent. But its glow no longer belonged to her. The whispers came faster now. People snapping photos, asking questions, calling friends. Did you know Keanu was in Syria? Rowan funded the restoration? They've been doing this for years. In secret. Rowan leaned toward the mic. Full disclosure, I thought we were just saving an old garden gnome. Laughter, this time warm. Keanu took one step forward. His voice was soft, but carried. Some things are worth protecting, even if no one ever knows you did. The applause that followed wasn't loud. It was heavy, respectful, real. Before we continue, drop a comment below. Are you Team Keanu or Team Mr. Bean? Let's see who's got the louder legacy. The museum director, an older man with tired eyes and a voice like time itself, stepped onto the stage. He carried a small plaque wrapped in velvet, the kind used only for legacy pieces. The room hushed again, this time out of respect. As tradition dictates, the director began. The names of those responsible for our most treasured recoveries are engraved into our heritage wall, not for fame, but for remembrance. He pulled back the cloth. The plaque shimmered beneath the lights, bronze letters carved with precision. Donors of the Imperium Youth Statue, Mr. Keanu Reeves, Mr. Rowan Atkinson, in honor of courage, preservation, and quiet legacy. No music, no fireworks. Just the weight of silence that said more than applause ever could. Lucette stared at the plaque, her name nowhere near it. Just a 4th century vase she once outbid a prince for. Once her pride, now forgotten. She stood frozen. Her power, her presence, her legacy had quietly slipped into the hands of 2 men she had called a joke. A museum staffer approached Keanu and Rowan with a guest book. Rowan took the pen first. Do I just sign or write something dramatic? The staffer smiled. Rowan scribbled a message. History is full of kings and crowns. Sometimes, the only difference is who stays standing when the curtain falls. He handed it to Keanu. Keanu simply signed his name, nothing more. As they stepped down from the stage, Rowan glanced one last time at the Marble Boy Emperor. Do you think he knows we saved him? Keanu looked at the statue's calm expression. He does now. Lucette stood by the upper gallery, untouched champagne in her hand. She watched as curators, historians, and once judging elites now swarmed Keanu and Rowan for handshakes, photos, interviews. The people who used to beg for her attention had moved on. A reporter passed her. Madame Duval, your thoughts on tonight's outcome? Lucette adjusted her posture, offered a faint smile. Unexpected. But charity finds its way, I suppose. The reporter was already walking toward Rowan, who had just mistaken a sculpture stand for a drink tray and made an entire table burst into laughter. Lucette turned back toward the staircase. As she descended, she passed the donor wall once more. She stopped in front of it. Keanu Reeves, Rowan Atkinson, above her, above everyone. She stared, long and still. Then, a voice behind her, calm, familiar. You didn't lose the auction, Lucette. You just never understood what you were bidding for. She turned. Keanu stood there. No gloating, just quiet power. You could have humiliated me, she said softly. But you didn't. I didn't need to, Keanu replied. History remembers more than applause. He walked away, hands in his coat pockets. Rowan was already waving at a child near the museum door. No spotlight, no mic drop, just quiet victory. 2 weeks later, the museum unveiled the statue to the public. Families gathered around it. Tourists took photos. Children whispered the names out loud. A docent pointed out the plaque to a group of school kids. One of them whispered, "Wait, Mr. Bean did this?" The docent chuckled. "Yes, but I think he prefers Rowan, when he's saving empires." Lucette returned one evening. No entourage, no makeup, Just a black coat and a notebook she never opened. She stood in silence before the statue, reading the plaque again and again. And for the first time, she understood. Legacy isn't the spotlight. It's what remains when the lights go out. She turned away, her heels echoing softly through the marble. No applause behind her. Only the distant laughter of a child saying, "Keanu's cooler than Batman." If this story made you see silence and humility in a new light, drop a comment below. Legacy speaks louder than pride. And share this video with someone who needs the reminder, because not all heroes need introductions.